morning, and welcome to another exciting Illustrator Geek tutorial video. I'm Mark Shears, the Illustrator Geek, and today we're going to make this really cool hexagon-based MC Escher-esque image. I was going to do some information on creating patterns and a bunch of different things, but I ended up making this image, and I thought it was so cool. I thought, just forget everything else. Let's just make this image today. And maybe I'll do a different tutorial video going into a little bit more depth about how to make patterns. But today, let's just make this one because it's really cool. First thing we're going to do is open up Adobe Illustrator. Let's create a new document. And I'm going to make this one 1920 by 1080 pixels, which is the size of the video that I'm making. So it'll fill up the video screen. If you wanted to make this as a desktop wallpaper, you could make it whatever the dimensions are of your computer's desktop. But I'm going to go with 1920 by 1080. Create a couple of things I want to do real quick right off the bat is I'm going to turn off snap to pixels. We do not want that turned on. My guides, I'm going to create a couple of ruler guides just real quick. I'm going to select those. I'm going to center those to my artboard. You can see right here at the top. I'm going to use horizontal align to center and vertical align to center. And then we will go back over here and lock the guides again. Here's what we're going to do. First of all, let's set a black color to the stroke and go to the rectangle tool over here. Select your polygon, click. Let's make a polygon of 6 sides and a radius of 50 pixels. Clean that up a little bit. Next thing, go to rotate. That's R on your keyboard. Rotate, alt click, and you can select a value of 30 degrees. Hit OK, and you can see what that did was it moved the point up to the top. Now, select that with your black arrow. We're going to make a couple of copies of this. It's selected with your black arrow. Now switch over to your white arrow. You can do that with keyboard shortcut A, which I will be doing from now on. And start dragging and then hit Alt or Option. And you can see a second arrow has appeared. That means you're going to copy this. And when both arrows turn white, that means that you're aligning to a point. You're aligning to that corner point. So release your mouse, and there you go. Let's do that again. Black arrow, select, white arrow, click and drag, Option, duplicates, release. And I click off to deselect. Now you can see we're already starting to look like a kind of a cube shape here, except I want to get rid of these. It's kind of a funny looking cube, right? So what we could do is select all of those and go over here. And well, there's 2 places you could go. One is in your properties palette under Pathfinder, view more, and then hit divide. Now the other place you could go, of course, is to Window, Pathfinder, and you'll have all those options. Now what we have is a group. So let's ungroup, object, ungroup. I have a group of 5 images, but well, we don't really want this thing, do we? And we really don't want that thing either. Now what we have is 3 things, and it looks really cool. It looks like a little cube. Isometric cube. Basically it is. It's an isometric cube. If you were to create an isometric cube pattern, that's exactly what you would get. Select this, select everything, go to Object, Path, Offset Path, and we're going to offset by -3. Hit OK. Now, make a copy by selecting it, and I'm holding down Shift and Option. Make a copy. We're going to use this later, so just do it, and you'll see later it'll make sense. Over here, we're going to combine these two strokes into one shape. Go to Object, Compound Path Make, and if I swap the fill and stroke, you'll see that now we have one shape. Same thing here. Let's go to Object, Compound Path Make. That's Command 8, so I will use Command 8 on the next one. Again, swapping fill and stroke. And Command 8, swap fill and stroke, which is Shift X, by the way. So here's what I'm going to do next is I want to apply a gradient to this. So let's go over here. Make sure that the fill is above the stroke, okay? Otherwise, any color I apply will be applied to the stroke, but I want it to be applied to the fill. And we're going to select the black to white gradient. I'll select the top one, and let's change the direction of the gradient by finding the gradient tool over on the side here, which is keyboard shortcut G. That's what I'm going to use from now on. And I'm going to drag from here up to here, going from basically from white to sort of the middle tone of the gray. Hit V on your keyboard shortcut and click off. Let's do the same thing here. G brings up my gradient, and we'll do the same thing. But I actually, you know what? I want this to be a little bit darker. So I'm going to shift this up just a little bit so that it goes from a little bit less than white to a little bit not quite black. And then here, the same thing. Now, whoops. Now, shift the gradient all the way up so that it goes from the middle tone all the way to black. So now we've got kind of a cool looking cube with some gradients applied, and that's going to make a really cool pattern. Over here on this copy, do this. Click the outer stroke and delete, outer stroke and delete, outer stroke and delete, and go ahead and fill these with the same gradient. Just kind of fill it for now with any old gradient direction. We're going to use these later. I'm clicking on the stroke to get rid of the stroke over here, clicking none. Zoom out a little bit. Let's group these. Let's select these and group these. This I'm going to throw off to the corner of my screen, but this I'm going to use to create a pattern. Select it, go to Object, Pattern, Make, and you get your Pattern Options panel. Now, you can name it with a new pattern or not. Let's just call it Mark's Cool New Pattern. And Pattern Tile Type. This is a tool worth experimenting with. You can do lots of cool stuff with this, and maybe I'll do this in a future video. But for now, I'm just going to show you what I'm doing for this particular image, but there's a lot of cool stuff you can do in here. But what tile type do we need? This is clearly not a repeating pattern. At least it's not what it's supposed to look like. Right now, it's set to grid. It means it's looking for a square shape to repeat, but it's actually a hex shape that we want to interlock. And if you look at our hex over here, you can see it has vertical up and down, right? Vertical, that's redundant, vertical on the side. And so over here, we want to select the hex that has the vertical lines on the sides. They call it hex by row. Okay, well, I don't know if that's helpful, but okay. The picture is more helpful. Ah, look what's happening. We've created a really cool pattern that is just filling up the shape. This is a preview of the pattern, and the preview, you can set these previews to show, any number of different 5x5, 7x5. That hardly matters, actually. It really doesn't matter. So because we're going to go over here, back up to the top and say save. We're going to go up to the top and say done. And look over here. In my swatches palette, we have a new pattern called Mark's Cool New Pattern. All right. This, I could delete this, but you know what? Let's just throw it over to the side for now, along with this other one, just in case I need it again later. So now that we have our pattern set up, we're going to create a rectangle, fill it with the pattern, and then rotate a bunch of copies of it in order to create the final image. So let's create a rectangle, and the size doesn't matter. And we'll fill it with our pattern swatch. I might say pattern and I might say pattern swatch, interchangeable terms. Now here's where things get a little bit tricky. Whenever you rotate something, it's going to rotate around the center of the object that you're rotating. You can see here the center, here's the center. So let's rotate this and copy this a handful of times. You can see it's rotating around the center, which that's a pretty cool effect. But what if I want this to be the center around which it rotates? Well, what can I do? Because here's the thing about patterns. I'm moving the box, I'm trying to move the pattern, but the box is moving with it. Or I can go into my preferences and I can uncheck this box where it says transform pattern tiles. Let's uncheck that, hit OK. And now you can see that when I move the rectangle, it's moving the rectangle, but it's leaving the pattern alone. So the weird thing is it's impossible to move a pattern inside a shape, but it is possible to move a shape without moving the pattern. Which means in this case, it's not possible for me to move the point on my cube over to the center, but it is possible for me to move the center over to the point on my cube. Just like that. Whoops. And let's zoom in and let's just be really precise. I'm nudging it now with my keyboard with my up and down arrow keys and left and right arrow keys. So at this point you can see the center of my rectangle corresponds to the point of my cube around which I want to rotate it. But now I want to move this rectangle back over to the center of my artboard, but I can't just move it because the pattern itself is not moving. So let's undo. So what I do is I go back to preferences and I say, yes, this time do transform the pattern tiles. Now when I move my box, the pattern is moving along with it. So I want it to be exactly centered on the artboard. So a couple ways you could do that, I suppose, but let's just go up here to the control panel where it's selected align to artboard. We're going to align horizontal and vertical. At this point, it is exactly aligned to my artboard. Now I want to make a really big copy. I want to expand this rectangle so that it's way bigger than the artboard itself. But you see what happens? The shape, the pattern expanded with the shape. So let's go back into our preferences and unclick this where it says transform pattern tiles. Now we can expand this rectangle without transforming the pattern. Now I'm holding my Option key when I do this. That is what allows me to expand it equally around the center point. So now if you've done everything right, you'll have a rectangle filled with this pattern where the center of the cube aligns with the center of the rectangle, aligns with the center of the artboard. And now we're going to rotate, make copies of this and rotate. So let's select this. And because we're going to rotate it and make copies, we want to make sure that we are going to transform the pattern tiles. So yes, make sure this is clicked. Hit OK. Now I'll go over to my favorite tool, which is the Distort and Transform tool. I'm going to pretty much leave everything at the default setting. Let's put 1 degree in the angle of rotation, hit preview, and let's start making some copies and watch what happens. And I'm just hitting the up arrow on my keyboard. I could just enter the complete value here and do it all at once, but I want you to see what's happening. It's filling it up. We'll go all the way around. all the way to 180. Yeah, at this point, I'm just going to type it in. 180 degrees, and there we go. How do you like that? This is pretty cool over on the side too, isn't it? But there you go. Now there's one more thing I want to do. Let's zoom way in on the center. I'm not totally crazy about what's happening here. So what I'm going to do is, remember earlier we saved a copy of our cube over off on the side? We're going to take that copy of that cube and we're just going to drag it over to the center. Where did it go? You know what? It's behind my shape. You can see up here in the layers, this group is behind the rectangle. So just move it up. There we go. And I'm going to nudge it into position. I'm going to zoom way the heck in here. My keyboard increments are set to point 1 point. So very fine increments. And let's just get it exactly in the right position. Now earlier I had just kind of put some random gradient values in there. And I could adjust those at this point if I want to, but I'm actually feeling like they're not bad. They fit in pretty well, I think. But say I did want to adjust those, I'm going to select the group and I'm going to go Object, Ungroup. Ungroup. That way I can select each one. It's not showing selected. It's showing selected up here, but it's not showing that it's selected here. Probably because under View, I'm hiding the edges. So let's go to Show Edges, and there you go. Now you can tell that it's being selected. Let's hit G for Gradient. Brings that up. I'm feeling like maybe just a tiny little bit darker, so I'm going to move it a little bit over on the... Now actually back it up just a little bit. I'm feeling pretty good about these other ones. I do want a little tiny bit of that background circle pattern to show through. So I'm actually going to decrease the opacity to, let's say, 80%. I like that. That's a good effect. So zoom back out. So there's our image. At this point, we're going to go File, Export, Export as, we'll call it Escher pattern for part 2. Why not? Use artboards. Remember to use the artboards because there's a lot of stuff going on outside the bounds of the bounding of the bounds of the artboard. And if you forget to hit this, you're going to get this huge image that includes everything that you see on your screen. Export. I'm going to go Art Optimized. Hit OK. Have a glass of wine while you're waiting. Sometimes it takes a while, especially when it's a large image like that and there's a lot going on. At this point, I'm just going to save my document and close out of there and quit Illustrator. So that's it. Thanks for watching this episode of Illustrator Geek. I hope you had some fun making this. And the fun is really when you get in there into the pattern tool and the distort and transform tool, and you just start to play with all the different options that you have available. All of the different effects that you get with that kind of thing. Hit the subscribe button, hit the notification button, leave a comment below. And you know, if you see things I do where you feel like I could be doing it better or different somehow or more efficiently or whatever, let me know. I'd love to hear different ideas on how to accomplish the same things. But yeah, just follow me, leave your comments, give this thing a try. It's really cool. It's a lot of fun. So enjoy the rest of your day. Take care. Be good. Go create some really cool art.